know, you take a lot of things out of the other. Okay. Yeah, it's another Nessie healing with a million. That's it. You look at it with a Nessie healing, so Nessie healing with the other. Maybe I think she was a little bit of maybe I think she is a little bit of so you take a lot of Nessie, maybe I think you could have been there. Maybe got it. Maybe it's a whole year. If you want to get to win your nut for you do it. Yes, you did have a senior, you did a senior, so but I don't know if you support that. If you have some people you get a senior, say, you get a senior, so Later, media senior, continuity, later, senior, continuity, you don't go to the new country. I don't know, I will not take that. Yeah, you see that, you see that, you can have it. Now, I'm saying I got 2 new, I take that. You got to power it, I really should have been wrong, I have 2 new. And I look at it as yes, yoga, the shadow. You do it, Sanga, so shadow. You do it, yoga, you don't need any, but do it, in shadow, so that I did the other, you Jesus,
at the moment of seeing, the obvious or very clearly defined dukkha satya are the dukkha satya. Of course, at the moment of seeing, there are only very few. The first one is the eye or eye sensitivity. In Pali, Chakku Pasara. And the second one is visible object. These two are materialities, which are also dukkha satya, the truth of suffering. These are obvious at the moment of seeing. It is quite correct. At the moment of seeing, there has to be eye sensitivity. The eye has to be sensitive. Eye should be clear. Then only one can see. And also, visible object has to be there. So the presence of visible object also is understood for the seeing to take place. Therefore, at the moment of seeing, there are these two rupa dukkha satya, materiality, the materiality truth of suffering, namely the eye and the visible object. These are the materialities, two materialities, or two rupas. Then we have the mentalities, namas, such as seeing consciousness. In terms of Abhidhamma, it is known as Chakku Vijnana, eye consciousness, seeing consciousness. and there is this contact between the visible object and the seeing consciousness in the eye or eye sensitivity. This is called phassa or chakku sampassa in the literary sense. Then we have feelings, good or bad. If we see a pleasant object, then we'll feel good, we'll feel pleasant. If we see an unpleasant object, an undesirable object, then there will be unpleasant feeling. So we have these two kinds of feeling. Chakku sampassa vedana. Chakku sampassa vedana. Therefore, the mentalities are the three, namely seeing consciousness, contact, and feeling. Although there are other things, at the time of seeing, these are the main things. Two material dukkha satya and three mental dukkha satya. Now, when we are exercising mindfulness, we are not noting one by one of these 5 things. We are not noting by analyzing, oh, this is the eye sensitivity, this is the seeing consciousness, this is the visible object. Not in that sense. We just note as seeing, as in a composite way, with the ordinary labeling as seeing. In a composite way, this is how one exercises mindfulness, sati, as seeing. In this way, one is said to be exercising mindfulness of the presently arising obvious dukkha satya, the truth of suffering, at the very moment. Of course, there is one addition to be made in the Vedana feelings. It is adukama sukha Vedana, neither pain nor pleasure. It's a balanced, neutral feeling. However, in the beginning of the practice, such neutral feeling is not obvious. That's why it is left out. Although in the Abhidhamma the 3 kinds of Vedanas are mentioned, including Adukama Sukha as Upekka Vedana, in the Suddhanta method, the 2 obvious things, namely the pleasant feeling and unpleasant feeling, are only to be noted. As the saying goes, Yatha Pagatan Biniveso, Vipassana Biniveso. That means one should note the obvious objects in the practice of Vipassana.
Same area, another one, like four years ago, or another next one. Sarah, what they got, I will do that. Get some fun in there. I just, I did one, I will take up take that one, I will take for you, so you can say, me people, me people, me people, and you never say that, put that people and that they can put that
To understand better, there are three elements, namely base element, striker element, and ignition element. Now, the base element in the case of seeing is the eye or eye sensitivity, which is struck by the appearance, color, and so on, and it receives hence the name base element. Then we have this striker element, which strikes the base element, like the appearance, the color, and so on, which gives rise to seeing consciousness, contact, and feeling, which are the three mentalities as ignition element. So in this way there are three elements: base element, striker element, and ignition element, which is easier to understand. Why are they called elements? For instance, in the case of base elements, they are called elements because there is no such thing as personal being, individual in them, and there is no such thing as jiva atta in them, if for those who hold the view of atta, self or soul. They themselves are not jiva atta. They are mere sabhava, essential quality. So only when they are mentioned or they are described in terms of characteristic, function, and manifestation will one be clear. Now, it has the sensitivity. It's just sensitivity, just clarity, which is struck by appearance, color, and so on. And its function is to connect between seeing consciousness and the visible object. And then it's manifested as seeing. This is a sight of seeing. The eye is a sight of seeing. One sees it at this from the eye, in the eye. So in this way, these are the qualities in terms of the characteristic, natural characteristic, function and manifestation. Hence, they are dhatu sabhava elements, the essential qualities, the individual essence, and which we call base element.
ဒီရတဲ့ဆင်းရဲပဲအတိုက်တာလို့ဆိုရတာကမျက်စိကြည့်နေကွာရှေ့ရှုတိုက်ခတ်ပြီးပေါ်လာတာတော့အဲဒီသူ့ရဲ့ဘာသူရဲ့လွတ်ဆောင်ချက်ဒေတာကမြင့်တဲ့စိတ်ရဲ့အမြင်ခံတဲ့ဒီကအားရမြင့်တဲ့စိတ်ကလေးဟာအမြင်ကအားရပါကျက်သားရအနေနဲ့သင်ထားတယ်ဒီလိုကတော့လည်းလာပြီးကျက်သားတဲ့ဘုံလေးကကိုကြည့်ရတယ်
Gochara, pasture.
Pasture. အဲ့ဒါတော့လက္ခဏာရဲ့ဒီလိုခံတဲ့ဒီလိုဖြစ်ရတယ်
Now as to visible object, it is known as striker element. Now it has also its natural characteristic, function and manifestation. In terms of sabhava, natural characteristic, it strikes the sensitivity, that means the eye. It strikes. And then its function is it has a function of being seen, merely seen. And then it is manifested as the pasture, as being a pasture of the seeing consciousness. In other words, seeing consciousness as its pasture, has visible object as its pasture. As to the quality of this three ignition elements, first we have the seeing consciousness. Now seeing consciousness takes place in the eye, depending on the eye. Just mere, it depends on the eye in order to give rise to seeing consciousness. And it has a function of mere seeing and no more than that. Mere seeing, no more. That means it will not go to the extent of understanding anicca, dukkha, anatta. Instead, it's mere seeing. And as a pasture, as it reaches, it goes to the object as its own pasture. Now as to the qualities of Phassa, it is the contact, just the contact, object of contact, and it is a function of striking, hence is one of the striker element, ignition element. It is an ignition element, and then it is manifested as contact between the visible object and the seeing consciousness in the eye. Now in the case of Vedana is given as 3, but if we go into these 3 one by one, it may be confusing. Therefore we just describe Vedana as such in a composite way. Now Vedana is just feeling. It is the nature of feeling, good or bad, depending on the nature of the object. So it is the sabhava, this is the sabhava lakkhana, natural characteristic of feeling as good or bad. There's no such thing as atta in them, nor are they atta themselves. There's no such thing as person being individual. The mere elements, mere feeling as an element. Therefore, at the moment of seeing, there are these three elements, namely base element, striker element, and ignition element, nothing more. Only these three things. However, the majority of the people are not exercising mindfulness. Hence, they are not concentrating their mind. Hence, they are not knowing things as they are. They are not aware of the realities. The result is that they will hold the view that it is I who is seeing. It is Jiva Atta who is seeing. And the one who is seeing is I, or Jiva Atta. In this way, one will hold the view of Atta or Sakaya Deity, the distorted view of individuality. Because of the lack of mindfulness, there is no concentration, there is no knowledge. So what happens? What arises? Only kilesas arise. Then there will be this distorted view of self or soul, namely it is I who is seeing, it is Jiva Atta who is seeing, holding the view of person being individual. And then all sorts of kilesas can arise. So as to be free from these kilesas, so as to be free from these clingings, view clingings, we are advised to note. Note means exercise mindfulness as soon as seeing takes place.
တတိယဆောက်ရှောက်ကာကွယ်မပြီးတော့တမာရီကိုဖြစ်ရင်တကယ်အရှိဆုံးတော့မမြင်တော့ဒီပေါ်မှာညီတဲ့ကာလမှာထင်ရှားတဲ့တိုက်တဲ့ခန္ဓာတိုက်တဲ့ဘုရားပါလို့ជីវအတ္တဆိုရည်ကိုဒီကတိတိဖြစ်တယ်ဒီကတိတိကိုတရားရဆင်းရဲတဲ့တွေ့ရင်တမတရားကဖြစ်ပေါ်ရှိတယ်။အဲဒီရောရည်ရဖြစ်လာတယ်။မိစ္ဆာရောကိုယ်တည်းတဲ့အမှန်တို့ရှိရင်စိတ်ထိကြပြီးတော့ရောလာလို့ရှိတယ်။ပြီးတော့သောလဆဆပြီးတော့ဖြစ်သွားတယ်။အဲဒီပြောတာ။အဲဒီလိုပြည့်တာမျိုးကိုရှိရအောင်။ညီလိုက်မှရှိတဲ့ဒီစောင့်နေတာ။ညီလိုက်ပါညီလိုက်တဲ့ကထိစားတယ်ကွာ။ခန္ဓာစိတ်ရဲ့ဘုရားကိုဒီတော့ဒီသာဝါဆောဆောဆောနေနေတယ်ကွာ။အဲဒါစတိနဲ့ဆောက်ရှောက်တာပဲပြည်တာ။ကာကွယ်ပြီးတော့ဟိုလားကာကွယ်တဲ့ကျင်းရောက်ဖြစ်နိုင်တဲ့ပြည်တာတွေလုံးချုံနေ။လုံးချုံရတဲ့ရဲ့ချက်ချုပ်ချင်ခါရလွတ်လာတယ်။လွတ်လာတယ်တော့ထိုက်တာလေး။ This certificate education.
Because of the lack of mindfulness as a means of protection, there will be no concentration of the mind. Hence, one will not see the realities as they exist. One will not see the three elements or one of the three elements at the moment of seeing, with the result that one will cling to the view of Jiva Atta, individual self or soul. It will enter one's stream of consciousness. This is known as Sakaya Deity. One becomes a victim of Sakaya Deity, the distorted view of individuality. Therefore, when the visible object is pleasurable, one will like it and then crave for it and become attached to it, from small attachment to a more serious attachment. When the object is undesirable, unpleasant, there may be aversion, from small aversion to serious aversion, dosa or domanassa, mental distress, So this is how it can happen. So as not to allow these kilesas to happen, it has been advised to guard your mind with vigilant mindfulness of every arising, every seeing in this case, when you are bound to note, you are bound to be aware of one of the three elements, either the base element, the striker element, or the ignition element. This is how one protects one's mind with vigilance.